For those of you watching this video, are you a new player or have you been playing Magic the Gathering for a while? I'm asking because it feels like the opinions of someone that is getting in through Universes Beyond and all this hodgepodge of collaborations is going to be very different from someone like mine who got in during an era of Modern where Splitter Twin just got banned. And that's what I wanted to explore in today's video, doing a watch through of a person who is a relatively new Magic the Gathering player and what their take is on the game itself, seeing if they're taking a focus on Commander versus Constructed, or where their look is in terms of Universes Beyond and all the collaborations and the rising prices of these hobbies. It's not so easy to get into something like this these days and how that affects their view of the game that we love. My impressions of Magic the Gathering as a new player, which I think is a very important thing to understand here, because a lot of players come in now as a Commander player first before a Constructed player, which blows my mind because I came in the other way, although we kind of evolved my play group into soft Commander play as well, because obviously we're playing in a group, we want to play together. And even at the same time, some of us that were kind of deeper into the game, we would go out and play Constructed events. We would go out and play Pauper or, maybe delve into some Modern. We would go to the LGS, but everything else was just we wouldn't really go for Commander Night. It wasn't really that big. Command Zone came a couple years down the line. So I'm really interested to see what the new player experience is for this person in particular that doesn't really post Magic content. So I'm interested as to where this goes. Leave a like on the video.
All right, so recently I've gotten into a small up-and-coming card game called Magic the Gathering. And although I thought maybe about doing some sort of history video on it, that seemed like a lot of history to cover. What would I even talk about? Every single set that's been released, every card ever? I don't know, I think I'd fall asleep just writing it. So I thought I'd do what I do best, and that is, of course, to complain. For those with good personal hygiene who might not be aware, Magic the Gathering was a game developed in the early 90s by a man named Richard Garfield. Garfield's game was not just any game, but a trading card.
Oh, the sleeves, the no sleeves
game, one of the first of its kind. In this game,
how many Black Lotuses in that pile? How many duels in that pile?
Would go on to inspire pretty much any and every other trading card game you can think of. Pokemon, awesome. Yu-Gi-Oh, Bible Battles, all heavily borrowed the design philosophy of Magic. Now, over 30 years after its initial release, the game has expanded to encompass multiple formats, multiple franchises, and multiple types of people that have one thing in common: smelling really, really bad. And with a group like that.
Okay, all right. And you know what? I feel let me be honest here. First of all, I hate the stereotype. Second of all, as someone who's delved into multiple TCGs, Magic the Gathering has some of the better smelling players out there. We're just the front-facing one. I'm just saying, as someone who's played multiple TCGs, I can, in my personal experience, say we got the better smelling people.
Who wouldn't want to join in? I remember when I was around 7th grade or so, I had just gotten done with my Yu-Gi-Oh phase that lasted for a good 2 years or so and was looking to try something new. I'd played Hearthstone on my iPad for a bit before downloading the Magic the Gathering app and was a huge fan of
what in the this is back before we could get Arena. Is this duels? Oh my god.
The art. Shit looked sick. So for Christmas, my mom ended up buying me a starter pack, and damn, I did not realize how much I was relying on the app to do everything for me. I had no idea what was going on and had no one to play with, to be honest. I was able to convince my mom to try and sit down and play a game with me, but I was just really bad at explaining things because I was 12, so it didn't go particularly well. And then for over a decade, those cards sat in an old perfume box until I dug them out again recently. Over the past few years, I'd kept getting told by people to check out Magic the Gathering, and finally with my buddy JP, I tried Commander with my Slimefoot the Stowaway deck and kind of messed with. There
we go. So the re-entering of Magic, not through Constructed, but through a more welcoming environment. Because that's what it is. At the end of the day, Commander is way more welcoming than any Constructed format. You don't have to pay for it. It's proxy friendly. It's multiplayer. You're not siloed off. So if you have a 3-person or a 5-person, you can still get games in. 5-person Commander is something, but it's not, to start off with, it's not bad.
It for a bit, but I didn't really get too deep into it until a few months ago when our other friends got into it, and then I had even more friends that got into it, and now I have 10 decks, sort of. We'll get into that. So I think at this point, it's safe to say that I've been able to form a variety of opinions about the game, some good, some bad, that I'd like to discuss today. Specifically covering the Commander format, it's what I usually play, but I think a lot of what I'll have to say will extend to the game as a whole. Well, if you're somehow unaware, Commander is now one of the most popular Magic formats that Magic has to offer, putting a large emphasis on keeping games casual, usually with a group of 4 players, although having 3 or 5 players is still okay from my experience.
5 a little too much. 3 is fine. 3 is fine. 4 or sorry, 5. the amount of time it takes.
Unlike some other Magic formats like Standard, Commander has players build a larger deck of 99 cards with a specific legendary creature card as their commander, which will not only decide which colors the deck will be built around, but lays the groundwork for what theme you'll want to build around as well. In this larger than average deck, you can have no repeated cards outside of basic lands, pushing a less competitive nature as there's much more variability from game to game. One of the greatest aspects of Commander, in my opinion, is the social nature of the format. By having more players involved, it becomes a great excuse for me and my friends to get together and just play some games. In Commander, the goals can change by the minute, as not only do you have to worry about...
Honestly, a lot of times that's the thing. The gathering aspect, the social aspect is just not there in Constructed. If you're in that environment, you're nervous, you're playing maybe in a tournament, there's already all this kind of nervousness for a lot of players that they can't really shake. You're in it for some type of reward. You are at a FNM and you paid $5 to $10 or whatever for some amount of prize support, so you're nervous about winning. So a lot of people kind of deal with that in different ways, whether they're more social or more angsty. And in general, you just hop into Commander and a lot of it, yes, there are bad experiences. There are people that suck with their social social interactions, but a lot of it is made a lot easier because it takes away some of the anxiety. But you know,
keeping yourself alive and in the game, but you can commonly be incentivized to help other players stay in the game as well to deal with the bigger threat on the table. Things can quickly turn into matches where players are making deals with one another, debating who the largest threat on the table is, and playing in unique ways that you wouldn't normally see in a 1v1 format where the goal is to simply just win as quickly as possible. As previously mentioned, I have a whole lot of decks right now. I've honestly just really loved the deck building more than anything. Picking a commander is usually how I start this, whether it be just from looking at a card I think has cool art or has a unique mechanic. It sets a decent foundation for how you want to build your deck going forward. So far for decks, I've got my first deck being a Slimefoot the Stowaway deck focused on healing myself and pinging enemies by killing Saprolings. The Animated Army Bloomburrow Precon focused on
this commander is so... Let me tell someone in the comments down below, how many of you have played against Bello? This commander is insane. It's wild. The cards that are so niche that this deck breaks. This is such a sweet Gruul commander. It's so different in many ways. This raccoon, oh my god, what a commander deck. Like honestly, what a deck.
By creating a bunch of enchantments and artifacts that can attack each turn. A slightly upgraded Food and Fellowship Precon featuring Sam and Frodo as the partnered commanders with a focus on creating a bunch of food to gain health. A Sauron Lord of the Rings deck that focuses on graveyard recursion.
So we can tell this player is definitely, again, like super recent. We're seeing commanders that are coming out of precons, more recent sets, maybe a little bit of recognizability. Definitely, like, this isn't someone from 5 years ago. This is someone within the last couple of years.
And building a big orc army. A Marvo Deep Operative deck that uses a forgotten mechanic called Clash that can be used to cheat out big sea creatures. A Kibo deck that focuses on just giving bananas to people to make some big old monkeys. A Flubs the Fool deck which focuses on a lot of landfall to just draw and instantly play a bunch of cards a turn. A Mendicant Core Guide-like deck which puts a focus on...
Mendicant Core Guide-like. Oh, yeah. Yo, this is like that command. This is that card that's so fixed because of Start Your Engines. If you have max speed, whenever you cast an artifact, you may pay 1 if you do copy it. Yeah, that's when it's broken. The Start Your Engines completely balances the living crap out of this deck. But in a commander format, it is much better, I will say, because the speed that you have doesn't go away if your commander goes away. So that's kind of nice. But when it comes to constructed, this card would have been all hex type of broken. If it wasn't for the max speed.
Making a bunch of robots and artifacts. And finally, for now at least, Assert in the Shipwright deck, which has players often vote for a variety of things for super politically focused games.
Love it.
One of my favorites right now is it really feels like it keeps everyone involved in the game.
Why are there cards upside down? I'm sorry, why were there cards upside down in the deck? Was the deck upside down and your commander upright? Why? I'm sorry, my OCD is going insane. Why are the cards upside down? But I'm joking, but I think they have a really good spread of decks. I actually love this. Like, it's not just one or two strategies that they really go for. They've got some landfall, they got some reanimation, a little bit of life gain, a little bit of aristocrat shenanigans. There's a big spread of magic here. I actually really like this. This is introducing a lot of core concepts and a lot of interesting concepts. Yo, shout out to the list. Honestly, I love these decks. Like, actually.
Yeah, I got a bit carried away. Only took a few months, but now I've got a shit ton of decks. Already have some others that I'm trying to brew up since I started writing this. I've actually made 3 more decks. A Frog Blink deck with Clement the Worrywart.
One thing I will say is this is the type of thing that you want to try to walk away from in the long term. So Initially, when you're exploring and everything, this is great. What I find though is, especially with what a lot of people kind of speak to, is the fatigue of deck building, that they spend more time A, deck building than playing, and then B, they get tired of it because they just don't know what to play. They're overwhelmed by the choices, or it might be even worse. Like they tend to just hone in on trying to play one deck versus any of the other ones because they fall in love with it, and they just feel kind of nervous about the other ones. Like, I don't really know what's going on over there. I haven't worked on it in a while. I don't know what brackets it's in and all that stuff. So initially, it's great to explore. I love this. I love that they're using Architect. I love a lot of the commander choices that they're making. Just be careful about how many decks you're actually building and how much you can kind of core those down and focus on maybe 1 to 2 decks per bracket and focusing in on different types of play in each of them. They're serving different purposes to kind of fill your cup and all that stuff.
A Doc Orlock deck that focuses on playing cards from exile, and then a Ghost deck that uses the Disturb mechanic to bring cards back transformed from the graveyard. I'm still trying to find a way to make a colorless Eldrazi deck that just isn't super unfun to play against, but so far I don't really think that's possible, but we'll see. If anyone's really curious, I'll leave a link to my Architect profile down in the description so you can check out and even use the deck list if you like. I think what makes it so easy to build a bunch of decks in Commander, I don't know, at least for me, is the Commander itself. Since all it really takes is seeing a singular cool card, and then you're out here shoving as many cards as you can into a deck that fits the theme of the card you found. It serves as a very solid foundation, and with the years of development and iteration of the game, there's a whole lot of options to build around specific mechanics or themes in unique ways. Now, that being said, one thing I have noticed is the massive variability in power levels between decks. And to be fair, with this many cards released over the years, they're not going to be able to balance all of these cards and their interactions with each other, especially across multiple formats. It just doesn't seem...
And especially with the social aspect of things and the multiplayer aspect of things, it's hard for things to kind of come down. People have talked about, especially in CDH, the player going fourth is so disadvantaged. We see that in stats in a recent video I talked about. And it's so hard for that fourth seat, that last person to respond, the last person to get their resources to do anything. Whereas in Constructed, it's a tit for tat. You go back and forth. And yes, there are play draw discrepancies, but that can be alleviated based on the type of deck you play. But assuming all things are even, play draw can be a big discrepancy. And then turn order in a multiplayer format adds to that. And so balance is initially hard because of that. But then once you add social dynamics of people letting certain things go and not being prepared for something, inherently in lower power commander or in mid power commander, people are building towards engines and getting certain synergies going and then building up to big combos or finishers and everything. So they're less concentrated on interaction unless it directly stops them or a deal is made. And all of those factors combine to making balancing for something like that really difficult, and it's constantly being talked about in terms of how the bracket system is a basis. It's not a hard and set rule. Like, it's how you iterate and add that to your play group. It's how you implement it, and it's how Wizards of the Coast is just providing tools.
Bible. But sometimes there's just such a large disparity between the power of decks. So much so that I recently learned that decks get split into brackets to show their overall power level, with pretty much all of mine sitting on a solid like 2, because that's what I find to be the most fun to play with. Overall, nice. I understand the need to do this, but some of the decks you'll run into just make you want to just get up and leave. Jesus Christ. But I'd say that's probably more of a people.
Yo, shout out to Atraxa being like literally the... Yo, shout out to Atraxa being the commander show.
Problem than anything. I think if everyone at the table agrees to the bracket to stick to and follow, or you're okay with people breaking outside of it, then no issue. But if you're busting out some bracket 4 or 5 shit at the table on a bunch of randoms, you're just not playing things right. I just personally don't understand the desire for some people to turn the game into something close to competitive. In my opinion, this is just not something that should be played to win. It's more of making memorable moments and having a good time. But if you're into the competitive...
I think there's like a mix though, right? Like there is a mix of this where as you play more Commander, you have a desire for a more concentrated environment in some games, a more honed in experience where people aren't doing the nonsense and they're not just going for, repeating some type of chaos effect, warp world over and over again. They're actually trying to quote unquote win the game that doesn't just melt everyone's mind. And so that's where CDH is important. I think a lot of people have a lot of opinions about CDH. Ultimately, I talked about recently with as many complaints as I made that I think it's a necessary format, that I think it's a great format for many Commander players to explore. And I imagine this player might get there eventually on an opinion, yes or no. I think generally they're still just like, it shouldn't get there, but they also are playing generally bracket 2, which is great. Like they're doing a lot of exploration, a lot of deck building. They prefer the lower power side of things. So it's fair. They're not in the kind of bracket 4 exploration, but I feel like generally speaking, if you enjoy bracket 4, you probably are, you know, there's something kind of dumb holding you back from playing CDH. Honestly, like I think if you're a regular bracket 4 player, if you aren't already, you should try CDH. I think it will only serve to better you as a player through enriching your experience. I think if you're generally a bracket 3 player, or again, as this person, mostly a bracket 2 player, you may not have much to gain from it, but it's still worth exploring. Again, adding information to your total sample size is only going to help you make more educated decisions. And in a world where educated decisions and statistics and just when we are debating facts in a world where something like that is at its all-time low, I think it's important for us to do our due diligence.
Stuff, you do you, I guess. Now, that doesn't stop me from hating certain card designs and keywords, though. Like, land destruction, stupid. Tutors.
We did it. We found the casual. That's it. Yo, if they mention mill, land destruction is dumb. I can't. No, okay. Look, it's the most marquee casual thing to say, because at the end of the day, single target land destruction, especially mass land destruction and single target land destruction, are very different things. They pointed to pillage. Pillage and single target land destruction spells are some of the most important spells that are underplayed in the Commander format. By far. People don't understand the amount of times they lose to value generated by lands and land-based strategies. On top of that, Armageddon effects, Blood Moon effects, stuff like that, those are a bit more contentious. We try and take them out of bracket 3. Maybe they're introduced in with some type of rule 0 conversation, and they exist in spaces, and they can be more important, especially so in the bracket 4 format, which is fine. We can keep them out of 3, but saying land destruction overall is stupid is a fair point. But overall, once you gain more experience, if you still have that opinion, I'm not sure if you're actually growing as a player. I'm interested to see what their quip is about tutors.
Stupid. Eminence, interesting conceptually.
I guess they're just calling dumb. Tutors overall, sure. I can go on a rant about tutors. I just wanted to do it about mass land destruction, but the idea of like fetch lands being a tutor and spirit of the format and all that stuff, different. Eminence, definitely a dumb ability. That was a mistake. They've talked about how this is a mistake.
But holy fucking shit, this thing is stupid. There's a whole lot of things like this in the game, and I'm sure you'll play and you'll find your own things that you love to hate as well. That being said, you have to admit that these keywords at the very least keep things at least interesting. If everything was super balanced, the game just would be boring. Out of all the cards Magic has released, 2 of my decks in particular feature cards from something Wizards of the Coast, the publishers of Magic, like to call universes beyond. Essentially, these are just cards that
I did not know they would touch on this. I thought this was going to be very Commander focused, but okay.
Come in from other franchises outside of Magic and are made into Magic cards. As a big Lord of the Rings fan, 2 of my decks are pretty much entirely...
Some of the cards are upside down. Why? Why are some of the cards upside down and some of them right way up? Why are some of the cards upside down and some of them right way up? Why? I'm gonna ignore this.
Filled with Lord of the Rings cards, and I think Universes Beyond has done a lot to bring in players like myself. It's just really cool seeing something you know and love translated into the unique constraints of the Magic format, and a lot of times I feel like they really nail the flavor of having cards do unique things that match the characters they're trying to represent. Like the Sam and Frodo deck focusing on eating a bunch of food to gain life, that's kind of like what hobbits are known for. Makes sense. And to combo with that, I also have Bilbo, the birthday celebrant, in the deck, as there's a weird win condition where if you hit 111 life with him, you win the game, as a nod to him having his 11th birthday at the start of the Lord of the Rings. I mean, I haven't been able to pull this off yet, but just little things like this to show that there's a lot of care that was put into some of these collabs. But as much as I love the Lord of the Rings cards, I think I've got to acknowledge that Universes Beyond is simultaneously super popular and great at bringing in new players, while also hated by the community. When Wizards of the Coast first started doing Universes Beyond, there was a promise made that it would be restricted from certain formats. People were reassured that these are just like one-off releases. This isn't going to become like the new standard set of releases releases that come from the game. But after seeing how much money that shit rakes in, yeah, they kind of went back on that. And now about half of the new Magic releases will be Universes Beyond going forward. On the one hand, I do think some franchises meld really well into Magic, like Lord of the Rings, D&D, Monty Python, and kind of Assassin's Creed. I think they still at least keep the medieval fantasy elements with some Magic stuff thrown in there as well. But man, we've got like Final Fantasy, which for the record I think fits relatively well, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Marvel, Hatsune Miku, Chucky, Stranger Things, Ghostbusters, Fallout, Clue, Tomb Raider, Jurassic Park, Doctor Who, Transformers, Warhammer 40k, Street Fighter, SpongeBob, and fucking Fortnite. And don't get me wrong, I love a lot of these franchises. I even love a lot of the cards that come from these releases and collaborations. But I really understand the frustration that comes from a longtime fan of the game as the theme of the game entirely shifts into what essentially is a Fortnite-ified version of the game itself. But the game now just shoved full as many franchises as Wizards of the Coast can get their hands on. On the other hand, though, I like that players can get cards they like. Like, who am I to yuck someone's yum? If you enjoy the cards, fuck what I think. But at the same time, when I'm trying to build a new deck, it's annoying to see a card whose abilities I think would really fit with the deck, but I have to decide whether or not I want to ruin the theme of my deck by including, Optimus fucking Prime or a Space Marine Lieutenant in what's supposed to be a deck filled with medieval knights. And I think most people wouldn't care about this if enough of the regular in-universe sets were being released. But not only have Wizards of the Coast slowed down on how many of these sets were being released, but when they are released, sometimes they'll still include Universes Beyond stuff, like the Lost Caverns of Ixalan set, which included Jurassic Park cards. And even if these newer sets don't have Universes Beyond stuff, players have just gotten pissed at a lot of these sets just feeling really lazy. Just taking in-universe stuff and then completely changing the theme of the characters, like with the Outlaws of Thunder Junction set, which turned everyone into cowboys. And honestly, I really liked this set, but man, I feel like anyone who wants the old school theme of Magic has just been getting screwed lately. The recent return to Tarkir with Dragonstorm, I thought...
So I want to try and address some of this. So initially they came off, they said that it's really cool, a lot of the flavors really kind of nailed for them, and how they find it interesting that it can bring in a lot of people. But they do address the fact that a lot of enfranchised players are upset. And does that kind of speak to old men yelling at the clouds type of deal, where a lot of us old heads that have been around for a while are used to a status quo, aren't used to what the Zoomers are used to. We're screaming about, back in my day, I had dial-up internet, and the kids these days they got internet in their cars, and they're glamping, now. So it's different now, right? So it's a different world where players are coming in and enjoying Magic the Gathering through Final Fantasy, and the contention comes from when you explore things deeper. And I do want to acknowledge what they said there, where when they're building a deck, that there is a bit of a problem there when they're talking about theme. Certain cards are really cool for the deck, but you just can't play them because all of a sudden your Frog deck is playing Optimus Prime and is using abilities like More Than Meets the Eye and all that stuff, Ezio, and it's got like real life figures in there like Da Vinci, it breaks some of that immersion in there. And that would be fixed if we had the 1-for-1 versions of Universes Beyond with their in-universes. And there's all these problems where recently they talked about how some of the future sets, due to licensing, Magic Online and stuff, is only going to have, Magic Online versus paper are going to have different versions of the card. There's going to be in-universes version, and the paper is going to have the Universes Beyond, but the online versions are going to have the universes within. And again, that's due to licensing and stuff. And so there's a lot of contention as to the implementation of some of this and how it's not being done right. And I really find it interesting that this new player is able to kind of grasp all this, like get both sides of the story. But also I feel like they're not necessarily coming down on their own point. Like they're kind of bringing everything up. And I think that's fair. But where I'm reading between the lines is they're generally positive about Universes Beyond, which was my guess, my thesis about, what this video would be largely positive in some ways, but bringing about criticisms of the community that may not be theirs. And I think that's some of the things that even I get trapped in, where sometimes it's, I have to be careful about what my opinion is versus what I believe the community's opinion is and what the opinion is at large for me to kind of agree with. I do like some aspects of Universes Beyond, although I don't with others. I do like some parts of competitive play, but I don't with others. And it's important to be able to speak that out, but have reason for it and be able to have a back and forth as to where your line is. So that was just really great
and seemed to be really well received by the community. So hopefully going forward, we get some more new sets that are focused on in-universe Magic characters and theming. That said, even with great releases like Tarkir, the price of Magic is just too fucking expensive.
Yep.
I understand that there is a lot of licensing costs for a lot of these Universes Beyond releases, but $70 for a Commander Precon is insane. And that's just MSRP. At the end of the day, these are easily going to spike in cost for at least the first month or two after the release. And if they have something really good in these boxes,
and even long-term down the line, like due to licensing, you think they're going to print this Commander set in like a couple years down the line? No, this is your only way to get it. You want this down the line, you're a Final Fantasy fan down the line, like this is your only way to get it. It's that FOMO pricing that's really going to get you.
that price might eventually be even higher, like with the Necron Precon in particular, which I found retailing in my local store for $180 fucking dollars. How do you tell someone who's trying to get into this game to spend this sort of money? Are we forgetting that these are pieces of cardboard with fancy pictures on them? You know, I know Wizards has to make money, but it just feels so greedy. And this problem only
I mean, that's like with the whole world. Like, people don't understand, like, especially with the tariff situation, right? Like, prices aren't going to go back down to like pre-tariff prices. I hope you understand that, right? Like, everything's just going up. Like, these tariffs that are going around the world, thanks to the big orange angry man in the United States, like, the price is just going to stay where they're at or slightly above where they were before, because different organizations and businesses realizes that consumers are able to pay a certain price threshold. So why under capitalism would they decrease it to a lower amount? You know, eggs went from, I'm just throwing out numbers, $6 to $7. They're not going to go back to $6. They're going to go to $6.50. You know, these are the long-term implications of decisions like this, of people that are frankly, you know, way above us and have no power. We just give them the power to do so. So rise up in some way, I guess.
Pounds with scalpers picking up many new releases to resell them for an even greater markup. And I mean, scalping isn't nearly as big of an issue for Magic as it is for something like Pokemon right now, but it's definitely not an issue that is relegated to that one game. In fact, and I'll happily admit this, but as much as I've been enjoying Magic, after I got 2 full decks, my Sauron and Slimefoot deck, I just started proxying pretty much everything.
Good.
Only 2 of my decks have strictly real cards. Everything else is simply printed on cardstock or used as printer paper slipped in front of real cards. Good. Now, do they feel as great as real cards? Of course not. And do I wish I could get the real cards instead? Of course, but it's just too expensive to be paying this much for a piece of paper. It's the same issue with Warhammer, where after I started buying some of the stuff for it, I just bit the bullet to buy a 3D printer because it just didn't make sense to keep paying these prices for little bits of plastic. Even if they look cool, and even if I enjoy the game systems around them, it's just not.
A couple $100s to thousands of dollars just for like a base army set, and then it just doesn't become relevant anymore. It just, this was one of the hobbies where I always thought about getting into, but way too expensive.
Financially feasible. And unlike Warhammer, I feel like the prices really affect the community of the game. With prices getting higher, it bars certain people out of the game due to its costs, which lessens the hype and turnout for releases, cuts people's ability to run drafts, and limits the ability of players to actually, I don't know, trade cards with each other. It's just disappointing, and I know it won't.
And it just keeps a worse group of players in, right? It takes the casuals away. And I know Wizards of the Coast doesn't want to directly acknowledge proxying. They do in some level to, like, you know, competitive players, where competitive players before, you know, standard Pro Tours and stuff, like, you know, they proxy up different cards and shuffle them up and play. Like, they have them in Wizards interviews talking about proxies, but they don't have proxy promotion for like Commander and stuff like that. And it's just the truth of the matter. You have to allow it for people to be able to play the game. It's just the truth of the matter. At some point, prices are going to become so high, it's going to become beyond the point of support your LGS. Like, I'll support my LGS at some point by like purchasing product from them, paying for events and all that stuff. But if, you know, if my LGS becomes this place where I need to allow I need to have all fully built cards, no proxies, whatever, I just can't go there. Right? That's not a realistic expectation, because yes, me, who's more privileged and is able to buy certain amounts of cards, I know the type of people there won't be able to, and the type of casual player that's newer or something, someone who's looking to explore the game, and someone who, like, these are the type of people that I want to play with, the new players and everything. I want to help their experience be better. These aren't going to be the people in the game. We're going to see the same people over and over again. There's going to be no churn. You need new people in the game. And prices are very prohibitive for all that. It's like with all hobbies now. It's like the price of you can't just have a casual hobby anymore.
Get better. So for now, I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing with proxies, with the hope that someday things might change. That's not happening.
Nah.
That's not happening. Yeah, anyways, that's my overall thoughts on things. What I'm hoping for the most in the future of Magic is some more interesting in-universe sets, cheaper prices, obviously. And if we're going to do the Universes Beyond stuff, I hope to God Wizards of the Coast cater to my interests. Please, I need a FromSoft collab so fucking bad.
That's the thing. That's everyone's line, isn't it? You know, you hate Universes Beyond until it's a set, until it's an IP you like.
So yeah, what are your thoughts on Magic? Do you love it, or have you moved along to some other card games? What commanders do you play? What do you hate about Wizards of the Coast? Let me know down below. I do always enjoy reading the comments and things you guys have to say. Thanks, of course, to this month's patrons: Mads, Dave the Unknown, Griff, Einar Anderson, Turmeric, Maddie Grady, Ken.
Saying, shouting out their other peeps and everything. Okay, but let's leave a comment down below. Love the full perspective as a new player. Sorry, excited to have you play more and dive deeper into this great game. Love it. Just kind of throwing in a comment on there for the algorithm. Of course, if you're this far, go watch the video in the background, leave it on, leave a like in the video, give this video its time in the algorithm itself. But overall, it's really interesting, the positive light of this, and how, again, it felt like some of the concerns were kind of community driven, but also very aware of some of the pricing concerns, and almost getting to the idea of distribution and everything, kind of getting around that topic. But some of these issues are not just for longtime players, and it goes to show you that a lot of people that are in comment sections and everything just saying like, all you like to do is complain, and to not just me, but to other creators, just goes to show that those people are very privileged to be able to say something like that they're able to engage with Magic in such a way where they can disengage and not have to deal with the negativity of it. But as someone who does this for so much content, and for many other people that do this for full time and everything, this is your whole thing. For you who goes to your office job and everything, may complain about co-workers you're working with, the systems you're using, the commute, whatever, like that's what you're complaining about. Imagine people are doing that with this game as well. They invested so much time and effort into it. Criticism is important. It helps keep people honest. There is a level, of course, but especially with the rising prices of everything and certain decisions that Wizards of the Coast unfortunately is being forced to make because of Hasbro, it's only up to us as players to be able to keep them honest. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts as this? Are you a relatively newer player? Did you feel like some of your opinions differed here? Did you find some of the perspective kind of interesting, or kind of you feel like it aligns? Like I'm interested. I would like to hear more from this player. I would like to do a bit of a, maybe I should try and message them to do an interview or something. Hey, if they're watching, I'd love to do a bit of an interview with this player, trying to see what the new player impression is of Magic the Gathering. But all right, yeah, we'll end the video there.